20 seconds. T-minus 1 minute.
1 minute and counting. Roger.
Number 1. Mercury Redstone 3, or Freedom 7, was the first United States human spaceflight on May 5, 1961. Piloted by astronaut Alan Shepard, it was the first manned flight of Project Mercury, the objective of which was to put an astronaut into orbit around the Earth and return him safely. Shepard's mission was a 15-minute suborbital flight with the primary objective of demonstrating his ability to withstand the high forces of launch and atmospheric re-entry. Shepard named his space capsule Freedom 7, setting a precedent for the remaining 6 Mercury astronauts, naming their spacecraft. The number 7 was included in all the manned Mercury spacecraft names to honor NASA's first group of 7 astronauts. His spacecraft reached an altitude of 101.2 nautical miles and traveled a downrange distance of 263.1 nautical miles. It was the 3rd Mercury flight launched with the Mercury Redstone launch vehicle from Cape Canaveral, Florida. During the flight, Shepard observed the Earth and tested the capsule's attitude control system, turning the capsule around to face the blunt heat shield forward for atmospheric re-entry. He also tested the retro rockets, which would return later missions from orbit, though the capsule did not have enough energy to remain in orbit. After re-entry, the capsule landed by a parachute on the Atlantic Ocean off the Bahamas. Shepard and the capsule were picked up by a helicopter and brought to an aircraft carrier. The mission was a technical success. Number 2. X15 Flight 90. Flight 90 of the North American X15 was a test flight conducted by NASA and the U.S. Air Force in 1963. It was the first of 2 X15 missions that reached space, along with Flight 91 the next month. The X15 was flown by Joseph A. Walker, who flew both X15 space flights. The North American X15 was a hypersonic rocket-powered aircraft operated by the United States Air Force and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration as a part of the X-Plane series of experimental aircraft. The X-15 set speed and altitude records in the 1960s, reaching the outer edge of space and returning with valuable data used in the craft and spacecraft design. As of still today, the X-15 holds the official world record for the highest speed ever reached by a manned powered aircraft. Its maximum speed was 4,520 miles per hour, or Mach 6.
Before the X-15, the question had been, what is to be man's role in space travel? Can he pilot an aircraft out of the Earth's atmosphere, fly it in space, then re-enter the atmosphere and bring it back to a safe landing on Earth? There were many unknowns to be discovered, many problems to be overcome before the answer would be known. That today's test flight is almost routine is a tribute to the comprehensive program that has moved step by step to prove that man can pilot an aircraft into space and return.
Number 3. Apollo 11. Apollo 11 was the first spaceflight that landed humans on the moon. Americans Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on July 20th, 1969. Armstrong became the first to step onto the lunar surface 6 hours later on July 21st. Armstrong spent about 2.5 hours outside the spacecraft and together with Aldrin collected 47.5 pounds of lunar material for return to Earth. The 3rd member of the mission, Michael Collins, piloted the command spacecraft alone in lunar orbit until Armstrong and Aldrin returned to it just under a day later for the trip back to Earth. Launched by a Saturn V rocket from Kennedy Space Center in Merritt Island, Florida on July 16, Apollo 11 was the 5th manned mission in NASA's Apollo program. The Apollo spacecraft had 3 parts: a command module, CM, with a cabin for 3 astronauts, and the only part that landed back on Earth, a service module, which supported a command module for propulsion, electrical power, oxygen, and water, and a lunar module for landing on the moon. After being sent toward the moon by the Saturn V's upper stage, the astronauts were separated by the spacecraft from it and traveled for 3 days until entered into lunar orbit. Armstrong and Aldrin then moved into the lunar module and landed in the Sea of Tranquility, then stayed a total of about 21.5 hours on the lunar surface. After lifting off in the upper part of lunar module and rejoining Collins in the command module, they returned to Earth and landed in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th. Apollo 11 broadcasted live on TV to a worldwide audience. Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and described the event as one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Apollo 11 effectively ended the space race and fulfilled a national goal proposed in 1961 by the U.S. President John F. Kennedy in a speech before the U.S. Congress. Before the decade is out of landing on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. Number 4. The International Space Station, or ISS, is a space station or a habitable artificial satellite in low Earth orbit. Its first component launched into orbit in 1998, and the ISS is now the largest artificial body in orbit and can often be seen with the naked eye from Earth. The ISS consists of pressurized modules, external trusses, solar arrays, and other components. ISS components have been launched by Russian Proton and Soyuz rockets as well as American space shuttles. The ISS serves as a microgravity and space environment research laboratory in which crew members conduct experiments in biology, human biology, physics, astronomy, meteorology, and other fields. The station is suited for the testing of spacecraft systems and equipment required for missions to the Moon and Mars. The ISS maintains an orbit with an altitude of between 330 and 435 kilometers. By means of robust maneuvers using for engines of the Zevanod module or visiting spacecraft, it completes 15.54 orbits per day. The ISS is the 9th space station to be inhabited by crews, following the Soviet and later Russian and Soyuz Almaz and Mir stations as well as Skylab from the US. The station has been continuously occupied for 15 years and 120 days since the arrival of Expedition 1 on 2 November 2000. This is the longest continuous human presence in space, having surpassed the previous record of 9 years and 357 days held by Mir. Number 5. New Horizons is an interplanetary space probe that was launched as a part of NASA's New Frontiers program, engineered by Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory and the Southwest Research Institute. With a team led by S. Alan Stern, the spacecraft was launched with the primary mission to perform a flyby study of the Pluto system, and a secondary mission to fly by and study one or more other Kuiper Belt objects. On July 14, 2015, it flew 12,500 kilometers above the surface of Pluto, making it the first spacecraft to explore the dwarf planet. These vehicle-sized programs will provide a very important value to the development of the U.S. and its well-being. These vehicles have led to the development of current everyday technologies and have pioneered the history of the space exploration. The overall significance of these vehicles/programs will provide for the continuation and development of other more and improved futuristic space exploration vehicles, more advanced technology, and most importantly, they'll provide for the future of the U.S. among the collaboration of other countries to answer questions of the unknown, such as more in depth to as what are the fundamental roles of various objects in space, and are there other forms of advanced life out there. For now, the future of the U.S. and NASA will provide for more sophisticated missions involving programs such as to Mars, mining asteroids, and other important relevant studies.